Good morning, everybody. This is Professor Kavita Patel to lecture on the topic Personal Essay, Charles Lamb, the Prince of Personal Essayists. As the lectures given here are connected, today I am here to talk about personal essay and with special reference to Charles Lamb. There are various definitions of essay given, and there are various types of essays written in English literature. So the earlier discussions on this topic were dealt regarding the origin of essay, the definitions of essay. So today I'll straight away talk about the different types, and in that my special focus would be on personal essay. Let's begin with the brushing up of what it was done in the earlier sessions. As you can see on the screen, the earlier dealt topics in the chain talked about the prose form and specially focused on essay, and the definition, origin, everything was discussed. So here today I am going to talk about the other types, and again I will be coming to the last type, that is the personal essay. If we talk about the origin or the definition of an essay, we have a very standard definition given by Dr. Johnson, who defined essay as a loose sally of the mind, an irregular, undigested piece, not a regular and orderly composition. Which means that essay is basically a prose composition which is an attempt to dwell on some subject or part of the subject. If we come to the aphoristic essay, Bacon's essays are written in an aphoristic style. Bacon called his essays counsel, civil and moral. So this was the characteristics of the aphoristic type of essays. Then come to the character writers. In the 17th century, the essays took the form of character sketches in the writings of Joseph Hall and Sir Thomas Overbury. The very well known essayist Dryden, during the Restoration period, introduced the critical essays, and next to that the periodical and social essays were introduced, in a way innovated by the Tatler and the Spectator by Addison and Steele. The reviewers, and then the topic which I have taken up today is the personal essay. The personal essay, what exactly went into the working of the personal essay? You can read it on the screen. Life of sensation versus life of thought. And this is what a student has to work before they start knowing or try to understand what personal essay exactly means. That is, an understanding of English prose from 1600 to 1700, the 18th century English literature, Neoclassical Age, the characteristics of that particular age, which is the golden age of reason. Then when we begin the personal essay, English essay in the Romantic Age is the point from where I will start today. So first, my introduction to this topic will begin with the definition of Romanticism. Romanticism, in short, was an awakening of the imagination and the liberation of the heart's affections. It exalted the poet above his readers and stressed the dignity of his subjective feelings and thoughts. In addition, Romanticism was a philosophical revolt against rationalism. May I just come to the, in a way, characteristics of the Romantic Age, and that is that it was a reaction against classicism. It was, as it is said, that personal essay is a type of a prose lyric, and this is why we need to begin with the characteristics of Romanticism. It was a revolt against the rules of classicism. In philosophy, a theory that holds that reason alone, unaided by experience, can arrive at basic truths regarding the world. Associated with realism is the doctrine of innate ideas and the methods of logically deducing truths about the world from self-evident premises. Now, this is what we need to ponder on, and that is a synonymous feature of Romanticism is with the excellence or artistic quality of high distinction. For a minute, we need to compare the characteristics of Romanticism and Classicism to understand that why in this century the essayists, and especially Charles Lamb, wrote these kinds of essays. What was the aim, or what were the influences? Now, if we talk about the aims of Romanticism, the basic aim of Romanticism, there were various aims, so we can say that the basic aims of Romanticism were a return to nature and to belief in the goodness of humanity, to rediscover, that is the artist, to rediscover the artist as a supremely individual creator, and the development of nationalistic pride. And the last, the exaltation of the senses and emotions over reason and intellect. And this is the influence which made Charles Lamb titled as the Prince of Personal Essayist. And this was the bent, and this was the influence which led him on a parallel wavelength with the Romantic writers, that is Coleridge as one of the major influences on Charles Lamb. Now, when we talk about the characteristics, one distinct identity of Romanticism is that it affected all the forms of literature. It was not restricted to poetry alone, but it was affected to all the forms, and essay became the prominent one, which has been defined not without justification as a lyric in prose. And that is one of the definitions of personal essay, that it is tagged as lyric in prose because of these features, because of these distinct identities and the influence of Romantic Age. Now, how this brought the change, and as I showed you the first slide, why I listed those types, this is what my intention, and that is you have to connect the whole chain, and that is the very near comparison is to be done between the periodical essay and the personal essay. What was new? Then the new was the expression. New words and expressions, as you can read on the screen, the adoption of new subjects, themes and styles necessitated a vigorously creative use of language and a free admission of new words and expressions, mostly drawn from the vast store which the medieval and the Elizabethan revival had brought to light. And this is why it is said that the personal essays are the essays who translate the personality into print, and this is what made the personal essayists do that. That is, they translated their personality into print through new words and new expressions, which was an innovative feature of this group of essays. Now, one or two features, and that is their imagination and their impulse to what new things they could attain compared to the earlier ages. And it is in the general ferment of the period, the prose literature could not remain sober suited as it was content to be in the neoclassical age. Now here again, straight away you have to have the list of the characteristics of the neoclassical age, that is the age of reason, and how it shifted from that. During this period, it was felt that the atmosphere, the warmth, that is, it led to a strong imagination and passion and the energetic impulse to renew new, even the common life and its familiar objects. And this was the beginning of the personal bent into the writings as a reaction against the neoclassicals. Now, if we talk about the essays, their role, what they did or what they got into, the essayists in particular adopted many of the devices appropriate to poetry. And here comes the list of the figures of speech even the prose writers adopted, that is metaphor, symbol, imagery, rhythmical variations and alterations of tone and tempo in response to the rise and fall in the emotion or mood central to the composition. This was an experiment which Charles Lamb has excelled in doing, and that is the reason he is called the father of English, that is personal essays. In spite of the earlier group of essayists, Charles Lamb is remembered because of, or he is given a title to be the prince, as he innovated with these two forms. Thus, the romantic prose is very close to the poetry of the age but retains its distinctive identity. There is no straight comparison where it could be framed that the romantic age had common features in all the forms it brought, but there are distinct features of personal essay to be listed later on. Next, let's come to the definition exactly. If in a line, if we have to give a definition of a personal essay, it is said it talks about some personal aspects of the writer. The reader and the writer are at a very close sort of a communication, conversational level. That is what an ordinary framing of that definition would mean. During the 19th century, a long line of notable writers used the essay, as Montaigne had done, to reveal and exploit their own personality. Their leaders and masters were Charles Lamb, whose Essay of Elia are the classic English example of this genre, a delightful blend of autobiography, scholarship, fancy, humor and sentiment. You need to remember here that these are the features of Charles Lamb, the essays of Charles Lamb, which we are going to go ahead and in a way analyze, and these are the things you need to remember when we read the essays written by Charles Lamb, that they have the elements which are listed here. It's a blend of autobiography, scholarship, fancy, humor and sentiment. All these features bring up a compact essay which is written by Charles Lamb. Now let's talk about the personal narrative, that is the personal essay as a personal narrative. How come it becomes a personal narrative? A personal narrative has the following elements. It is based on a personal experience in which you have gained significant meaning, insight, or learned a lesson. It can also be based on a milestone or life-altering event. Now here it is needed to be stressed that there is no moral preaching. Rather, it is understanding your own personality. It is personal narrative. Here the writer tells the story by including dialogues, imagery, characterization, conflict, plot and setting. And these are the things which help a writer to write a personal essay. Now let's talk about the group of writers, essayists, who augmented the essay's scope and length. It is said that an essay has a moderate range, but the scope or the style, it is possible that you can stretch that. Hazlitt, Lamb, Hunt, Quincy and other writers, many of them associated with the Romantic movement, augmented the essay's scope and length, developing a highly personal voice. These writers produced some of the most popular and skillfully rendered prose works in English literature, addressing nearly any topic that came to their mind. Now, how they do this? What are the techniques or the devices used? So, when we talk about a personal essayist, the most important aspect is that is a personal conversation with a writer. A reader is able to have a personal conversation with a writer. Rather, we can say that the reader is referred in the very initial that is the opening lines by the essayist, that this is what the conversation begins like. I'm going to read out from Charles Lamb's Essays Ophelia, where in the very dedicatory note he is talking with the reader. The personal conversation with a writer, the typical familiar essay, whatever its theme, seemed to carry the reader into personal conversation with a writer who was tolerant, broad-minded, highly cultivated,